Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of the Sacred Cows of Coaching. My name is Neel, Arya, and I am joined today by.
Biran, Yilancioglu.
And for our fourth episode, we have a new topic that we are going to be discussing, and we are framing it as the question: if our clients don't succeed, then we have failed as coaches. Biran, where did that come from? How did we arrive at that question?
Actually, it came from a group supervision session that I was leading last week. And the coach said, maybe Biran, this is another topic that you can discuss in your Sacred Cows of Coaching podcast. And here we are.
So there we are. Your actual supervisees are now feeding us with lines of inquiry for our podcast.
Yes, they are.
But it's a really, really interesting question, right? So if our clients don't succeed, then that's somehow on us, right? We failed as coaches. And how true is that in your experience?
If you ask this question to a corporate client, they will have a different answer. If you ask this question to a group of coaches, they will have a different answer, right? If you ask this question to the ecosystem or some parts of the ecosystem coaching market, they will have a different question. So there is no one right answer, and there are many different elements to consider this.
Mm. And I love that idea of looking at it from those different vantage points, right? The client, the coachee, the broader ecosystem. I wonder if we could use that as a frame for how we hold this conversation. What do you think?
Yeah, let's use that frame. Shall we start from the coach's perspective, and then we look at the other perspectives.
Yeah, that sounds great. And so if we start with the coach's perspective, I'm drawn to the idea of us as a coach at different stages of our development. Because I know, I'm 100% sure that when I first started coaching, if my client was not successful, I felt that was on me, right? For me to be a good coach, the client needed to be having aha moments.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like it was a bad coaching session if the client didn't walk away going, wow, I've had this life-changing, career-changing insight into things. And I really did feel, probably for a few years into my coaching journey, that actually, if I was being effective as a coach, my clients would be able to overcome insurmountable tasks, right? Navigate transitions, for them to fail somehow, it would be my failure too. And I felt really, really invested in their success. And that's not to say that I don't anymore, but it was very, very palpable. It was like my success is your success, and that I would feel that I had let them down if somehow they weren't delivering on what they were seeking to achieve. How did that play out for you?
Oh, exactly the same. Exactly the same. And when I'm listening to you, Neel, I was questioning myself. Is it ego? Is it what we discussed in our latest episode? Is it about identity?
Hmm.
Or is it about the exaggeration of being of service?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think they're all of them. All
Yeah.
of them play into that feeling. Oh, am I good enough? Ego. I'm a good coach. Am I successful? Right? That is that part. And the identity, being clear about who you are as a coach and what you offer, and completely owning your identity takes a while. And it doesn't happen when you're new in this job, right? It is a growth and development process to
Hmm.
feel comfortable in your own
Hmm.
skin as a coach.
Yeah. Yeah. So that ego, identity, and service, and I think those are interesting frames for us to kind of hold on to then as we continue to explore the journey from the lens of the coach. Would it be okay with you if we switch emphasis for a moment?
Yeah, sure.
And so I'm interested also in then the idea of what the buyer or the client organization is looking for. And I've certainly, again, perhaps in my earlier days of coaching, somewhat naively signed up to be a coach and to help achieve the desired objectives that were coming from the client organization,
Mm,
right?
mm,
So perhaps situations where the client wanted an outcome, but maybe the coachee didn't want that outcome. And there being this tension and this sense of sort of feeling torn, um, in terms of these three-way contracts that we create in
yeah,
terms of, oh, well, this is what the organization wants, but it's not compatible with what the coachee wants. And perhaps, being less sophisticated in terms of being able to sort of marry those different elements up. But again, that sense of, hey, well, are they going to engage me again if we
yeah,
don't deliver what they want as an organization to
yeah.
have as the successful outcome?
I think this is what makes leadership coaching much more complicated than regular life coaching, because you have many stakeholders in that relationship, which which contributes to this self-doubt, right? And it is very interesting that I think over the years there are some clients, corporate clients, organizations that are aware of the role of the coach and what coaching is about, but there are still younger organizations in this arena. Uh, they still look for the same results. Like, these are the goals. That's why we pay for you, the coach, and somehow dumping the leaders or managers a responsibility of developing their team to the coach.
Mm, mm,
And then part of our job as leadership coaches or executive coaches who have many stakeholders in this relationship is to educate them as well.
yeah.
Educate them about what coaching is and educate them about whose responsibility to drive results,
Mm,
but at the same time still be accountable, right? So one of the questions I think we need to think about here is, yes, as coaches, we are not responsible for the results, but we are still accountable. Then how do we keep that accountability,
yeah.
but not take on the responsibility of the results?
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. And if we come back to then being the coach, one coaching program that I delivered a few years ago, there were distinct measures on every session. So the
Mm,
coachee was sent a survey after each session, and they were asked two questions. And one of those questions was, how moved forward do you feel
mm,
by the coaching?
yeah.
And then the other one was, how listened to did you
Mm,
feel in that session? And I found that those measures have kind of stayed with me
yeah.
because you could rephrase those questions, but in a way, we're looking for some kind of progress,
Yeah.
and we're looking for some kind of attunement to the coachee.
Yeah.
And I suppose I hold those as quite helpful measures of success, because they were not saying here, did you resolve your question, right? Did you achieve success? No, no, no. I mean, those are kind of horribly framed on the spot, but closed questions. But what we're saying is actually, coaching, we know, is this adult to adult discipline, and it is about making some form of progression,
Yeah.
right? And we can frame that progression in all sorts of different ways. But I like the idea of talking about sort of progression are sufficiently broad enough to be able to include perhaps more existential, more philosophical kind of shifts in the
Yeah.
coachee,
Yeah.
as well as tangible performance rated outcomes. And so I find that almost freeing, right? And I can reduce it to, am I being the coach that's needed, right? Am I really attuning to that person? Am I listening to them? Am I feeling them? Am I in their world?
Mm-hmm.
So that gives me a sense, okay, if I'm doing those things, then I have a certain degree of confidence that good things can happen. But also, coaching is not therapy, right? And so this progression and the nature of progress is important. And so we're on this journey. Someone is trying to get from somewhere to somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it offers me that sense of, okay, well, am I showing up then in terms of how I engage with this person in a way that's helping them move in that general direction?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are your thoughts and
Yeah.
reflections?
I like the idea of setting or tying the success of coaching into more growth and development rather than tangible performance results, because coaching is not that. And I know there are books and conversations about performance coaching, but at the core, what we believe is if there will be a transformation, long-term sustainable transformation, it should come from personal development and growth, right? And because it is not therapy, there should be some movement. So I love your questions there, actually, that the organization's two questions that we're asking the coachee at the end of each session: how much you feel you moved, how much you feel you're listened to, right? And I think what we need to remind ourselves as coaches is to our main responsibility or account, I will say responsibility, is to hold that reflective space for development. And not just for the client's development, but our development as well.
Hmm. 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 Lovely.
So you're not done when you are a coach, even if you have 10 years of experience, 15 years of experience. Maybe you are the master coach or you hold the MCC, whatever credential is out there at the top. You're not done. Growth never finishes. There is no end. How much do you invest in your own growth? Because you can't take any one of your clients to a place you haven't been. I'm talking in the context of personal growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And just building on that, Biran, maybe this is a bit tangential, but also I know a lot of excellent coaches that get to a point in their own personal development where they say, I don't need to be a master on paper, right? They move beyond that in terms of their aspiration, their development. So, in some ways that can be misleading in the market as well. I just wanted to offer that reflection. But a voice we haven't spoken about is the voice of the coachee here,
Oh, the coachee. Okay.
right? So we talked about the client organization, we've talked about the coach, but what does success mean to the coachee?
Yeah. Just before I forget, I have a fourth perspective, which is the ecosystem, the market,
Mm.
coaching market. Let's note it aside. I wanna address that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like to go there first before we go to the
No, let's
coachee?
start.
Yeah.
Let's start with
We're
it.
role modeling choice here, So yeah, what can constitute success for a coachee? And on a very obvious level, there may be a clear goal,
Yeah.
right? A clear goal that they want to achieve. But also there are a number of different elements to that. There's also success in terms of how they want to interact with a coach.
Yeah.
You know, I've been having chemistry sessions just this last week or two, and I've asked potential clients, okay, well, if you had coaching before, yes, okay, so what worked, what didn't work? And then you get back this sense of where they want you to be on this continuum. Again, you and I spoke about non-directive versus directive coaching and where on the continuum would be. I just had two clients this week say, I don't just want you to ask me questions.
Yeah.
Right? That would not be successful for me. Right? So again, if we're really attuning to what success means for our clients, again, that brings us back to these sacred cows.
It is the definition of successful coaching program or successful coaching relationship for the client, but also for the coach. We didn't also talk about that. I think, what does success look like for them? We need to explore it in the beginning, right? And it's not just achieving that goal. So I had a coachee that we just wrapped up our coaching relationship. We were working together for a year. And she came to me. The coaching topic was about setting up her own business, getting out of corporate life, right? And how does she do that, right? That was the goals that she set for herself. By the end of this coaching relationship, she feels ready and she has a plan, and she maybe even set up her own business at the end of the year, right? This was the goal. And life happened. A year is a long time. And for some family reasons, that we had our last session 2 weeks ago, and she didn't resign. She didn't set up her own business. And in our reflection session, by the end of the session, or by the end of the program, I always reflect on the goals and the process, what they have learned over this year, this time. And I said, look, this is the form that you set up for your goals. And what do you think about it? And she said, I feel 100% ready to set up my own business. I feel much more confident, and I learned a lot about my fears, my hesitations in this 1 year. And I'm just aware of that. It is the family situation that I need to be aware of right now, and I'm making this choice consciously right now.
Yeah.
And once it's done, I will do it. I don't have any more fears. And her definition of success, or her perspective of that 1 year of coaching relationship, was successful for her.
Right. Right. So the box couldn't be ticked, right? She hadn't resigned, she hadn't set up her business, but she felt ready to.
Yeah. And also
So,
we need to remind ourselves that you might set some goals for coaching, the clients might set some goals for coaching, but life happens.
life happens. Life
Right?
happens.
And it is not just the coaching that contributes to the success or the performance or the growth or the failure or the step backs. It's not just the coaching, because we are not in a vacuum, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that takes me back to the idea that actually we're a tiny part of someone's reality, right? Whether we're having regular sessions, 6 sessions, whatever the dynamic. Coaching is just, it's a point in time. It's a space where you can come back to this intention, you can work through it. The work happens between the sessions and outside of the sessions. A big, deeply held belief in my own coaching practice is that I coach the whole person.
Yeah.
And so, it isn't just about you in your role, but it's about everything else that's going on in your existence. And to your point, right, that will have an impact. And so really holding that kind of systemic, more contextual lens becomes really, really important in that. But we as coaches can tend to see the world through this lens of I am the coach, what must I achieve? And almost to coming back to your point around ego, believe in this kind of superhuman capacity that we might need to have, but it's just not realistic.
No.
And it may not really be in the interests of what's priority for the coachee as well.
Yeah.
So ecosystem.
Ecosystem. I would like to look at that from the marketing perspective and the impact of all of these marketing elements on social media or in other platforms on the coach's self-doubt.
Mm.
Logically, we are all aware of that. What we see on social media is not the whole story. And people tend to post about their successes, their learnings, and they show up in this area of like, oh, I did this, I achieved this with my client, I achieved that with my client. And you see all the other coaches' achievements on LinkedIn or other social media platforms, or even in ICF EMCC conferences. And then, oh, I didn't achieve that. I didn't do it with my client, did I? So maybe I'm not as good as a coach that I think I am, but you start to question yourself. That is one element. The other element is because, of course, I understand the organization's perspective of return of investment, but then it comes to the question how we define the return of investment there. So the organizations, they have this impact, the perspective of looking at the ROI. And because of that need or perspective, I see in the coaching market that there are many tools that kind of pumps themselves as use this tool and show your ROI to the organization. You will be able to show this and that and app and AIs, and just to showcase the value of coaching with set performance structures on these systems. And these apps or systems, I'm not saying that they are not helpful. Yes, they are absolutely helpful, but they again contribute to the self-doubt of the coach. Oh, then, okay, if I use this tool or that tool, my coaches will achieve the performance results, then I will be able to show that I am a good coach. All these things, they I think contribute to that question and pumping up the if the client doesn't get good results, it's not a good coach or they're not a good coach.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I noticed that how passionate I am about this.
No, and it's so rich, isn't it? This whole topic of how we are measured,
Yeah.
right? And what that evokes in us. And so you're obviously talking about the way we measure ourselves in the context of social media, right? That comparison, that questioning of, am I enough? But also then within the organizations themselves and the measures they put in. And it can feel as a coach like you're constantly under the microscope.
Oh, absolutely. It feels like that. If you're not self-aware, if you're not far in your own personal development, it totally feels like that. I've been there. I know how it feels.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I had to work on that with my own supervisor,
Right.
constantly comparing myself with other coaches,
Yeah.
other facilitators, and
Yeah.
feeling not enough, not good
Yeah.
enough,
Yeah.
not British enough, not, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So lots of things, not old enough, not young enough, not whatever. So, but that all came from comparing myself with others. And I
Yeah.
had to work on that with my own
Yeah.
supervisor.
Yeah. I'm struck also by the level of individualism in our field. When
Yeah.
you talk about all of these people posting on LinkedIn, or there's people writing this book or that book, running this workshop or that workshop. And you can feel quite naturally deficient, but again, it's kind of systemic. right? When we think about, say, certain coaching accreditation bodies that say that you've got to have made a meaningful impact on the profession.
Yeah.
So it drives this individualism. It drives people to be posting, I got this level of accreditation, that level of accreditation, and I can see how this becomes a spiral. Just a final thought for me, just around the measurement piece, then is, and I can't take credit for this perspective, was offered to me by Alison Hodge, who was one of my supervisors a few years back, which is that there's all this measurement of us. But if this is an adult discipline, and if we believe that actually our client's success is going to be some kind of shared outcome, right? We both need to show up in order to make progress. Then where is the assessment of the coachee?
Yeah.
And we do not look at it through that lens. We have all of these platforms and consultancies and individuals who are going out and saying, I am better than others because. I've come to a truth. Let's talk about ego for a second. I've come to a truth in my journey, which is actually there are just a lot of very good coaches out there. They're not better than each other per se. They'll be at different levels of development. That's okay. Because actually our success is a function of the context in which we're operating in. And that context means the coachee and what the coachee needs and their level of maturity and the systems around us in those relationships. And it's so nuanced, and yet we reduce things to the simplistic, to the competitive. And I think to your point, that there's really an opportunity to mature how we talk about this.
Yeah. I think our responsibility, let's put it that way, if we are going to contribute to the profession, one of our responsibility is to raise more awareness about this.
Yeah. And so here we are, the end of episode 4. If our clients don't succeed, we've failed as coaches.
So I'm going to ask that question to you now, Neel. What are you taking away from our conversation? Where are you at now?
I don't believe we failed as coaches. I believe we can fail if we don't really attend to being the coach and attuning to our coachees, to taking ownership for meeting them where they are, not where we are, and not joining them on this journey of helping them make some progress. Right? That is part of being in this field, is that there is this sense of progress. So I just want to leave you with the thought that as a coach, my journey is to accompany someone on a journey. But that means that they travel.
Oh yeah, I love
right? They travel, and that hopefully they're seen in a way they aren't seen in other parts of their lives. And so that ends up being meaningful for them.
Yeah.
What about you, Biran?
I 100% agree with you. I love the metaphor of travel. I really like that. And I think I want to leave this episode with another reflective question. And I want to ask our listeners what their inner dialogue is when things doesn't go as planned. And how do they define their success? Which is a question I think we need to keep asking ourselves continuously, because that definition might change for every client that we interact.
Lovely. Thank you all for listening. Do send us some feedback, like, subscribe. Join us next time. Take care. Bye-bye.